Welcome to the Creative Life Podcast. My name is Caroline and I am your host. Today on the pod, we have an absolute delight, David Salsa. David is an LA-based actor and acting coach, and he and I met a really long time ago in our early 20s living in New York. And he was one of those people, when you meet somebody and they just have the same sense of humor as you and the same energy as you, and you really could drive each other crazy, but instead you become absolutely best friends and attached at the hip. Well, that was me and David for a long time in our early 20s. And then, as life does, you moved down your path. And I was in New York and got heavily into teaching music. And he moved to the West Coast, back where he was from, and went further and further into his film and TV acting career. And now, through, a gift of the universe, we have reconnected, which has just been so fantastic. So I'm thrilled that he's here on the pod today to update me on what he's been up to all this time, but also to provide a really cool perspective on what it means to be a working actor in today's film and TV world. So let's get into it. Here's David. David, thanks for being here with us today on the podcast. I'm really excited about this. You and I have not talked in a really long time, and so there's a lot of your story that I'm excited to hear because I haven't heard what you've been up to these last several years. Would you start us off? How would you describe what you do, like in terms of your profession? Like, what are you?
I mean, first and foremost, what I want to be a storyteller, actor, storyteller, writer, director type. Those are the things that I like doing. And then over the last 10, 15 years, I've also become an acting teacher and coach. I spent 10 years working at the Lee Strasberg Institute. I spent, when I was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, I was a teaching artist up there in Oregon, and then I also worked as a acting teacher at Leslie Kahn Studio in Los Angeles for a while, and have always had a sort of affinity for teaching because I think teaching acting is because it's not a science. It has so many different ways to be done, and I looked at the way that I was taught, and there were times where I felt like acting teachers were imposing themselves on me as a teacher more than imposing, instead of finding a way to help me be a better artist. And so as a teacher, that's something that I like to focus on. So I have my own acting studio now that I'm starting, and I call it the Gift of You Acting Studio. And the idea of it is to try and find ways to help artists and actors find the best versions of themselves to bring out in storytelling and in characters. I think a lot of times actors and young actors want to not be them and be what other people think they're supposed to be for a character, right? I'm auditioning for this movie and I'm supposed to be this person, so I'm going to let everything about me go. And it's like, well, why are you giving, however old you are, if you're 25 years worth of information, why are you throwing that away? Why are you throwing away 25 years of experience? Where can you find the best version of yourself that you can then plug in and add to this, right? If this is the character and this is you, how can you sort of fit those puzzle pieces together? And that's my focus as sort of an artist. And I think some of the best stories, and I've done stand up a little bit in my life, and written some short films and things like that. And I oftentimes, like, the best stand up that I see is from a personal point of view. And at the end of the day, I think art is very personal, and you can discover a way to express your thoughts, hopes, dreams, and feelings through your art in different ways. And I think that is an important thing to do because it helps us get more in touch with ourselves. As I've aged, I think therapy and the psychology of our mental, physical self and our artistry are intertwined in various ways as well. So that's what I do.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, you said, I'm really interested to know more about, your background in studying to be an actor and all that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to this point? Like what transpired? I know that, you grew up in Oregon.
Yep.
And at what point did you get the acting bug? I mean, when did you start, if you forgive the expression, when did you get the bug? Like,
no, I think,
yeah.
I mean, for me, it's very interesting because I think growing up, I have immigrant parents, very self-serious, survival immigrant parents. And growing up, there was a lot of stress about bills and everything and fitting in going on. Mm-hmm. And I found myself as the younger of two children, always trying to be the diffuser of tension. And so I think that there was a lot of attempting to make jokes, and I'm a child of the 80s, so there was a lot of like doing impressions of whether I was like a 7 or 8 year old doing an impression of Ronald Reagan, or which is insane, and things like that to make my parents laugh, or the Steve Urkel impression, and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Growing up and making jokes and being silly, and also just having a lot of energy. And the two places that I put that energy into was physical activity and sports, and then sort of like joking and creativity and trying to make people laugh. And as a kid, I wanted to either be, a wide receiver for the 49ers or an actor in some way. But that was a little bit more back burner until I was in high school and I got injured playing football and was out of shape for basketball season and didn't make the team. And they were doing a play of Mice and Men at the school. And I had read that book freshman year and I thought it was a really good book. And I was like, I'll audition for it. Maybe I'll be a small part. That'll be fun. And I ended up getting cast as Lenny Small because I was like 6'1" as a 15-year-old. And so I played Lenny Small with braces, and it ended up being a very emotional experience around that because the play is all men and one woman. And so all of a sudden I was around this group of boys, young boys, young men. But it felt different than when I played sports. It wasn't this like jocular kind of thing. It was a little different, and it just felt more accepting. And like there were girls around, and that was exciting for me. But whether it was like the assistant director and the girl in the play, there was just more interesting activity and the creativity, and everyone was silly like I was as a kid, doing the jokes and doing or being that. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I bonded with the people in that play and just kind of enjoyed that aspect. And literally the night before the play opened, my father had to have open heart surgery. He had emergency open heart surgery. So I got home from like the final dress rehearsal. I was 15, so I didn't have a license. So another guy in the cast dropped me off at like 10:30 at night. Nobody was home. I was like, why is the house empty? What is going on here? I got like the phone rang. It was my aunt. And she just started randomly talking to me about things. And I was like, what's going on? And she didn't know if I knew, so she didn't say anything. And then my mom showed up and was like, your father's in the hospital. We're going to the hospital. I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh.
And so I was at the hospital until like 2 a.m. And he was okay. He's alive and well in his 70s now. But it was like this really weird, stressful thing. And the outlet that I had was the play. And so so I was at the hospital, and then I would do this play, and all of these people rallied around me, and they were there for me. And like part of my dad couldn't see the show, but like part of the cast came to the hospital to see my dad, and it was these things that are like super like heartwarming and feeling of love. And like my mom was like, I'm going to stay here. And my dad was like, you have to go see the play, And the way my dad tells the story is that like my mom saw the play, came back, and she was like, he was really good. Like he was, and my mom is not, I will say that my mom is not a complimentary person, normally. So, she was very
That meant something.
Yeah, it
That
meant
meant
something. My dad was like, whoa. And then, and so I got through that, and the play was great. And then the next week, there was an assembly at the school, and as I like to say, the attractive honors English teacher walked up to me at the assembly, and she was like, "I'm Mrs. Hale. You don't know me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know you. You're the attractive English teacher. Like everybody knows who you are. I just am not smart enough to be in your class." I didn't say that. That's what I thought. Yeah, I was like, "Hi." That's what I said. And she just was like, "Look, I saw you in the play. I thought you were tremendous. I want to encourage you to keep doing that." And I was like, "Okay." And I think as a person who I will admit struggles with a little codependency or craved approval as a child, that approval just filled me up. And so I would say that that's when I really got bit of like, I'm good at something, or people see me. And so then I just, for the rest of high school, I stopped playing sports, and I did theater. I went to undergrad and studied theater. I moved to New York to go to graduate school. That's where we met. Not at graduate school, but in New York. And I just sort of buried myself into it. And then as life continued, I think the struggle of being an actor caused me to sort of question and quit. And like I like to say that I quit acting about 3 times, thinking, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. But then got dragged back into it. And eventually I got hired at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is like one of the foremost regional theaters in the country. And I worked there for 5 years, and I just happened to have grown up like within 30, 40 minutes of it. So I was back home again, worked there for 5 years. And after 5 years, kind of felt like, okay, I'm not going to grow here anymore. And the itch to be in LA became profound. And because I had always, that was the idea was like to always like do film and television, stand up, and be involved in that kind of medium. I love theater, and I think theater is like the first love that I had. I went to New York because of theater. But that film and television draw was always so exciting growing up, in the 80s. Just the movies, the 80s and 90s. I mean, I'll never forget you and I seeing Anchorman together, and how ridiculous.
We were blown away. That was so our sense of humor at that time of our lives.
I'd never laughed so hard that my throat hurt after a movie.
Yeah.
And in some ways it like shaped our personality and our friendship for a while.
It's true. It's true.
In a very strong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember at this time, I mean, we were both I was sort of an actor. I was doing a lot of other things. And I remember feeling that you were really an actor. Like you were in graduate school at the time, and really you had your head around it in a way that was different than some of our other friends. I felt like you saw it as, this is my path and I can see a career forward. And I remember at that time you already had it in your perspective that you were going to end up in LA.
Yeah.
That was the path you saw.
Yeah.
I think at this time, this was before you went to Oregon for this chunk of time. And that was I remember it was like a bit of a surprise. Like, but you kind of were done with New York, if I remember correctly, anyway. And that kind of came at the right moment, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were living together for 6 months, maybe. And
you were in between places. You were on a tour, I think, right?
I had done a tour, and you were working a job, and I took care of your dog on the weekends.
Right.
And,
you kind of crashed when I was out.
Yeah. And it was great. And, but it was that thing where I was doing that tour, and I think being a West Coast guy, like I had done the New York thing. And also, I mean, my second day of grad school was 9/11. That's a whole other podcast and story, where we're just like, New York I was done with it. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
And so I felt like eventually, and I'd actually did come to LA before the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I was in LA for about a year, and then I auditioned for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Oh, okay.
and got it and decided to go take it because it was a solid paycheck and acting, and my sister had two little babies, and I was like, I could go be around them, and I didn't know if it was going to be 1 year. It ended up being 5. So and it was actually a really good step because I felt lost in LA. I hadn't found my footing yet. I was like doing improv, but I didn't have an agent, and everything just I didn't know what I was doing. And then when I was at the Shakespeare Festival, I met a lot of people who were further in their career than me, and people would come and see shows. So then when I moved back to LA, I immediately got an agent because of a person I had met in Oregon. I had people that I knew that were already down here. I moved into a building that my best friend that I met up there lived in, and ended up getting my teaching job because of him as well. And all of a sudden things fell into place, and then I started booking TV shows within that first
the timing
year
was
and a half.
right. The timing was on.
Yeah.
So what year was that when you moved back from Oregon and you were there really?
2013.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was there from 2008 was my first season to 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since 2013, you've been
in LA.
In LA the whole time. I mean, I'm sure you've been.
I mean, I've traveled. Yeah,
traveled, of course. You've not left the city of Los Angeles.
I have not left the county. No. Yeah, actually, I've gone to India to teach.
Cool.
So I go to India, and I've gone to Mexico City to teach a couple times too. So that's another thing we could talk about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
all right. So, but you started teaching pretty quickly. It sounds like
2014,
became
15.
your money job, or not your day job. I should
it was
say.
my side hustle, or and it's again, right. I was like, well, this is a really great day job because I'm around actors, aspiring actors. I'm working with text. I thought of it as a way, 1, to teach, and 2, to make me sharper.
I think that's true. I mean, that's how I ended up teaching music. For the same reason. It's like it just makes sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I kept bartending too. I was bartending on the weekends, and then I would teach during the week, and it was kind of like I think I had Wednesdays off or something like that, and it was like, okay, I'm doing this for a while, and then when the pandemic hit, I was like, never bartending again.
So now you're starting your own acting school, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And you're doing, I'm assuming you're auditioning and doing, you continue to do that. I mean, that's an ongoing thing. That's the life. Yeah.
And I mean, it is being an actor is such a interesting thing because there's times that you feel it's almost like going to the gym or working out. There's times where you're like, I'm in the groove right now. I'm working out. I feel good. And then there's times where you're like, can't get out of bed and you eat Taco Bell and you're like, I don't want to go to the gym. Right. And I think being an actor sometimes is that, depending on your finances and everything else, right? Like the 99% of the actors are in my position where they're still trying to find something to guide them. And we've got agents and managers, but they have 100 clients as well. And so you get 1 to 2% of their attention at times. And then so you're just trying to break through a wall to then have more people want to give you more attention, to say like, oh, let me publicize this. Let me help you with this. Let's do this. Or, some of my favorite like actor stories, I always think of like the show Lost. And the guy that played Hugo, I can't remember his name right now, but the bigger guy with the curly hair.
Yeah.
He talked about his audition and how he had an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm that had come out the week before his audition. And when he walked into the audition, everyone was like, saw you on Curb last week.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, what a great thing to hear, right? When you walk, like that's the path. When we talk overnight, people will call them an overnight success, but it's
not
built.
Really.
It's no such thing, right? It is, I saw you on this, or I one time saw you do an improv show. There's so many people that I did improv with in 2007 and 2008 that I see on every other commercial now, right? Like they're just like, and I'm like, I remember doing improv, like silly improv competitions with you, and now you're in State Farm commercials and things
Right.
like that, and that sort of build of of everything. I mean, Robert Duvall, Dustin Hoffman were roommates, right? And it's like, yeah, they were struggling together, and then they just kept they kept motivating and probably helping each other.
Yeah.
And it's, I recently got a new agent, which has been great. And I'm auditioning more because this agent started their own agency. So he's got a tremendous hustle. And, but I got that agent because it's a friend's agent. And she was like, oh, let me message him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is that where it's like, oh, well, this person vouched for you. I'm in. And, and then it's again, right. Like, I booked a TV show one time. I booked that show Loot, and I was on an episode of Loot, and all of a sudden the writer came up to me, a person I didn't know, or I guess I didn't recognize, and she goes, "Hey, I was on the episode of Superstore on those 2 episodes of Superstore you did, and I just thought you were tremendous. And when I saw you come up for this show, I was like, we got to have them." And I was like,
"See, it matters." Yeah,
I was
there
like,
are no. Yeah, I think a lot of theater people tell similar stories, and it's very much like the story of like you go in for a casting or something, and you're not right for it, and you don't get it. You even know you're not right for it. Maybe you're even auditioning for it, but you know you're not right. But then then you meet, 2 years later. Hey, I remember you. I saw you at this thing.
Exactly.
And you weren't right for that, but you're right for this, and it's staying in people's memories and.
Yeah, I remember auditioning for an agent one time, and I did an audition. It might have even been like a workshop. Can't remember. But I had met her 2-3 times before, and it had been 6 months since I had seen her, and I did this audition. And she goes, "Wow, your improvement really is showing." And I was like, "Oh." And part of me was like, "What do you mean? I've always been good." But I think what she meant was like I was more comfortable, I was more seasoned. It's like riding a bike, right? Like if you've never ridden a bike, or I like to think about like a kid jumping into the water, right, for the first time, and their parent going, "Do it, do it, do it," and the kid is like, "No, why am I going to do that? It's the water, I'm going to die." Right? You taught me to be afraid of everything, and then once the kid jumps into the water and realizes, oh, I'm okay, it gets easier. And so whether it's facing rejection as an actor, or I had an audition last week, and I crushed it. I felt amazing about it. And my friend who helped me, she's so sweet. She goes, if they can find a better person that can do this role, good luck to them. Like, she was like, you were so good. It was like a 2-page monologue, and I hadn't done like a monologue audition like that in a long time, but I felt really good about it. And I'm like, awesome. I still might not get it. I have no control. I'm just like if you want to ask a person out on a date, you could only control asking them. You can be like, "Do you want to go out on a date with me?" You said yes. Right? No,
you're right. There is a giving it all you've got, and then letting it go aspect. I mean, that's part of the performing arts in general, is like the sort of distancing yourself from the outcome.
Yeah.
You have to put in 150% into the process, or there's no shot of it. But then you have to let it go, and that's
have like a 10% expectation return.
Yeah, that's really hard for a lot of people to do. How do you? If you're right, so there's a lot of auditioning and a lot of waiting with that in the acting business. How do you stay sharp? Like, what do you do as a creative to stay sharp in between these things?
I think earlier on in my 20s, it was taking classes and doing things. And then, like, when I left the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and moved here, I knew I needed to sharpen my camera skills, so I took camera classes. I took very focused theater things because I knew I was going to be too big. I had this one scene that I remember working on where the teacher was like, "You're doing too much, move less. You're doing too much, move less." And I snapped and I went, "What am I supposed to do? Get my face like shot full of Botox so I can't move?" And she was like, "If it gets you to stop moving." And I was like, dang. But she was right, because when I kept it all inside, it created this amazing tension in the scene. And so, you learn things. And how do I stay sharp now? I'm in my 40s. I honestly, I think living life is what helps me stay sharp. Is because like I'm decent at breaking down a script. I'm good at memorizing lines. I'm good at having ideas. And there's some things that like, okay, I really need to work on this. I need to work on the minutia of this. But now it's sort of about embracing experience, embracing life. And, I love the quote from the late Jim Valvano, who was a basketball coach.
I'm from North Carolina.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You know Jimmy V.
Yeah, we know Jimmy V.
When he was dying of cancer, he said, if you can laugh, if you can cry, and you can think every day, you're living a full life. And I think a lot of actors I have to be an actor and not do anything but act. And we're forgetting to live. And so
when you're portraying people,
correct.
And as you started off, and your storytelling, you can't tell stories if you don't live any stories.
Right. And that doesn't mean you need to go do drugs to be a drug addict or any of that stuff, but you need to know what it's like to take risks, to experience loss, to feel. And you can transfer that stuff to the role and bring that version of yourself to the role. And so I think, as a person who comes from a family that's very rigid in not wanting to change, I think embracing change is really important. I think expecting the unexpected and connect, as an actor, connecting with your feelings is really important. And I still make my own stuff. I still do little things. I mean, I think as much as I kind of hate it, I think TikTok and Instagram is kind of a fun, silly way to say oh, I'm going to do a monologue on this, or I'm going to do a little bit, right? Uh-huh. And it could just be a dumb little bit, of walking around. Another thing that I do is, and this is so nerdy, but I play Dungeons and Dragons. It got me through the pandemic. Because Dungeons and Dragons is telling a story, playing a character, interacting with other people, and trying to be flawed and yet quote unquote win the game at the same time. And again, right, that's improv. That's that kind of thing. Even I was at a coffee shop yesterday, and I'm that person that always tries to embrace the odd conversation. If somebody asks me something, I try to be curious. Right. And not to get too Ted Lasso-y on it, but being curious is really good. And finding those things is great. Yeah.
Do you feel like you like to do a little something every day? I mean, do you like to be doing something that is
creative
like that every day? Does that feel good? Or do you like to kind of come in bursts and then sort of mellow out and then come back into it?
I think it's more the second. I think I think again, there's times where I feel really creative, and then there's times where I need to recharge the battery. I need to just watch TV. And I guess TV and movies are, when I was younger, I consumed it like crazy as an actor, going oh, what are the roles? And I still watch, I still go, this movie's great, this movie's terrible. I have all of those things. And at the same time, it is trying it when you're excited about it, do it. And not every day I'm excited to be an actor. Just like when I was a bartender, I wasn't excited to bartend every day. And so sometimes you got to suck it up and do it. And look, if I'm when I've worked on a TV show, those are long days, and waking up I had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to drive 2 hours to a lake to be there for a 6:30 or 7 a.m. call. That's not fun, but I'm there, and I could go sit in a chair and sleep, or like chill out, meet people, talk to people, get free food, and then go, okay, when am I supposed to be creative? In 2 hours ish. Okay, great. I'm gonna try and get myself to that point by then. And I think that's the big difference between theater and film and television. It's driving in town versus driving on the highway. You're hitting those red lights. It's stop and go. It's stop and go.
Interesting. Okay, so there's
Yeah.
more. Is that a question of like needing to pace yourself, or a question of needing to like switch it on and off?
A little bit of both. Because I think the thing that's great about theater is you are telling the story in that full arc, right? You're rehearsing the scenes, but then when it's showtime, it's hi, nice to meet you. I'm this person. I just got there's trouble in River City. To we're in love, and River City's great.
There's no stopping it.
There's no stopping, and you're working on a movie or a TV show, and it's let's do this scene. Let's do you and this person are splitting up. Okay, great. Let's do it again. Let's reset, right? And so you have to rewind. And the very first time I was on a TV set was I booked an episode of Criminal Minds, right? And I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the beginning. It's going to happen. And I showed up, and I was on set for 12 hours. And for 12 hours, I was like, yeah, this is it. Hi. And I felt like I was 7'5" and 500 pounds and in everybody's way. And I also felt like a kid that had shown up at the school in the middle of the school year, because it was episode 11 of 20, and I was in that one episode. And so people who'd been working together for 8-10 years are there, and they're like, hi, nice to meet you. We're best friends. Don't talk to us, right? Not like intentionally, but just kind of that thing. And I remember getting in my car after that first day and just like having a migraine headache and crying and being like, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life.
You were at full intensity all day long.
Full intensity all day long, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's right. I felt like I was trying to impress the prom queen for 12 hours, right? Please fall in love with me. Please fall in love with me. And I remember I had like 2 days in between the next day I was shooting, and I talked to somebody. I was like, it was rough. And she goes, same thing happened to me. And somebody told me, she was like, it's a machine. And you just have to know, when is it go time and when is it chill. She's like, bring a book. And so now I jokingly say that like being on set is catch up on my sleep opportunity, right? Like, it's like, oh, okay. Like I got this book. I can send these emails. I can do this thing. And then cause somebody's going to knock on the door or come up to your chair and say like, hey, we're going to be ready for you in about 15 minutes. Yeah. And, you can sit in your costume unless your costume's weird and janky, but like, they're going to give you time to get in your costume, and they're going to tell you, hey, about 15 minutes. And that's when it's like, okay, great, put it away. As opposed to being like, is it my turn yet? Is it my turn yet? Is it my turn yet? And just feeling that. And I felt desperate, all of those things, right? I wanted all my dreams to come true in one day.
It's like a 12-hour flop sweat. That's
it was awful. It was awful. Yeah, it was brutal. Yeah.
That's really so you learn. I mean, that's good advice though. To just in that it's like finding you have to be creative when it's asked of you. That's what's interesting about, I think, film and TV and theater really. But it's like, no, now's the time we need it from you. So the challenge for the creative is to have it, conserve it, and be ready whenever asked to put it out. And I think that's really challenging. Maybe you have just a day where you're like, I'm not at 100%. I'm at 60 today.
And so that's the day that you go sit in a chair by yourself more, and you go, you kind of are less chatty with people. Right. And it's an interesting thing because there's times where you're like, I know people, they'll be like, I was on set and this person was, this famous person was blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, that's a real big drama show that you're on. Like, they're working hard. Right. And they're having to do it every day. And, it's again, right. Like, imagine having to do a breakup, or you get fired scene, or an argument with your parents. Right. you have to run that scene 12 times at 3 different angles. And all of the, and each one and sometimes the camera's not even on you. Right. Yeah. So now think about to bring it to you in music, right? Think about hitting those high notes or belting those notes, but the microphone's not on you. It's on every one of those. Would you still, it's marking it, right? Isn't that like, oh, I'm going to mark it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to just blast your voice in the, until they're like, all right, here's the 1, here's the 2, yeah. Give me as much as you can here. And it's always helpful. And some productions are better at, and directors are better at guiding actors than others. But it's also like, if you're a smaller part in a show, if your emotional arc is mild, then be mild, right? Like, again, every TV is generally more dramatic than real life. But if you're like, hi, what can I get you today? Right? You don't necessarily need to have the backstory that your parents were killed in a car accident that morning, but you needed to go to work to pay your rent. Hi, how are you? What can I get for you? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like knowing how much to give, because if you need to be able to conserve the good stuff, really. I mean, like, not that the other stuff is not good stuff, but yeah, some of it just takes more work than the rest. I can imagine this is the kind of thing that's gotten easier over time. Like, you're pretty seasoned now, and you're just, is it easier for you to kind of make those judgments when you're on the jobs?
Yes, I think the knowing when is easier, or the I'm going to kind of bring it down a little bit is easier. The bringing it is still a challenge, can still be a challenge, because there's, you're on a TV show with James Van Der Beek, and you're like, man, I really want Dawson to like me. Right. Or like, I'm not going to like, my attitude is like, I'm not going to let Dawson outact me, or whatever it is, which I don't mean like, no, I didn't.
Goes over well.
No, I didn't. I really liked working with him, but it is that funny thing where you're like, I want to step up because I'm acting with somebody that I respect, or I'm working on or script is really funny. Right. And
the material, like, this is.
Yeah. Or the director is incredible. Like, I worked on this show and I had never met the director before. And after 2 takes, I was like, God, I really like this director. And I just felt myself just like, let's go. Right. Because, and like, other people were like, hey, this, and I'm like, ooh. And it felt so good and so creative. And then there's other times where directors or people are just like, okay, do it. Great. Okay, great. And you're like, today's work. It's work.
Do you feel like most directors, and you certainly don't name names because I don't want you to blow any deals, but like, do you feel like most directors nowadays, like, want a lot of ideas from their actors? Like, do they want to see a big creative spread of options from you when you go in, or do they pretty much have what they want and it's just like, give me what I want? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you are and what you're cast as. So, like, when I first moved to LA, I did a lot of procedural TV, a lot of like cops and blue collar guys. So I was either the cop on scene that's like, hey, this girl was found in the river, her body's over here, her head's over there. Good luck with it, right? They don't want creativity from me. They want information, right? I'm an information dump. So look like a cop, talk like a cop, walk away like a cop. And then sometimes it's a scene with a person and you have a little juice in it. And I would say that the rigidity is more about physicality than anything else, right? Is we need you to be here, here, and here because the camera's going to be here, here, and here.
It's the technical aspects of it.
The technical aspect of it is a little bit more rigid. So, like, one of the most fun shows I ever worked on was Superstore, and I got to do a couple episodes on there, and it was more fun going back the second time because I was like, they like me, and but the first time it went well, and then the second time I was there, I'm doing this thing, and we do the scene, and then we do the scene again, And then they're like, okay, we've got the dialogue. Let's do it again and just see what happens. And like, let's play. And I came up with a joke. I was like a photographer, and it was I thought one guy was this girl's dad, but it's actually this other guy. And like the first guy's shorter, the second guy's taller. So when the second guy gets in there, I go, ooh, I gotta zoom out. I didn't realize how tall, you know. And it was like this making a joke at the short guy. You know, and the director goes, that's staying in, do it again. You know, she's like, there we go.
Feels good. Yeah.
And that feels good, and it's fun, and you're creative, and like even the taller guy goes, keep doing that, he hates it. And it's just like this, like it's really good because you'll see it, you know, you get honest reactions, and it's a comedy, so they want that playfulness. And you know, whereas certain dramas and certain things, some people are going to be like, you have to be word perfect. Other people, you can say like, hey, what about this? And I think in film and television, it always comes down to, again, right? Like if Tom Cruise wants to do something different or do something again, they're going to do it. If David Salsa, right, cop number 3 or whatever, you know, shut up, David. No, let's just keep it the way it is, right? And you know, I'll tell a more humbling version of that. They did a remake of The Fugitive, and Kiefer Sutherland was in it, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but he's really good. But I worked with Kiefer Sutherland, and I had this one scene where me and this guy get into a fist fight, and then Kiefer Sutherland comes in and breaks it up. And Kiefer Sutherland was also like an executive producer on the project, so he had a lot of sway. And he was really nice, and it was, you know, all going well. And then we're like, okay, let's rehearse this scene. So me and the guy are like, bam, 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 rah, rah, rah. And then Kiefer Sutherland comes in and he goes, hey, what's going on here? And I went, this guy, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I started, Kiefer Sutherland just goes, oof. Like, bring it down.
So, listener, David just did, because this is an audio only podcast. David just did a motion of like putting your hand out and then squishing something down.
Yeah, make it like too much, too loud,
too much.
Yeah, and I just was like, and like I went, oh, right. It just, but it was that, but I realized he wasn't going to go that big. Right, and so I needed to match him.
Yes,
and I was
course.
like, oh, and so then we did it again. And it's that thing where the theater came out of me, the theater person in me came out and was like, we're fighting, so it's real. And it's like, no, we got camera and we can adjust levels and we can do things, keep it all inside more, right? And so it was that thing where we did it again. I was like, well, this guy's blah, 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 blah. And it was like, you don't understand, as opposed to like, roar. And it was so interesting because he is so muted, but on screen, he doesn't look muted. And so it's those little things that you start to realize the less is more of film and television, that it's going to catch everything is really good, because there is a lot to be captured. And as an acting teacher for film and television now too, I always talk about like, it's not, you don't need to show us what you're doing. You need to think and feel what you're doing and then let us try and figure it out. Right? Because some of the best television is that thing where it's like, oh, what are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? They're up to something. Right? And it's not like the villain isn't going to look away, pull a knife out and be like, moo hoo ha 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 ha. Unless it's like
not tying someone up on the train tracks.
Exactly.
That's a lovely segue, because I did want to ask you a bit about working with students and working with are most of the students that you work with young actors? I'm saying young, not necessarily in age, but young in experience. Is that sort of so what do you find, are they coming to you with easy, and is it easy for them to access their creativity at these beginning stages of their career? Or is that something that you help them to find their decision-making ability? Or is it something that a lot of them come ready with? I mean, what do you find when working with young actors?
I think that when I'm working with young actors or new actors, and I teach adults, so it's, 18, I mean, I've had 16, 17-year-old students, and I've also had 75-year-old students. But I think what often I'm trying to do is, one, give them a way to discover what's in scripts and text, and then help them access stuff inside of themselves. So if we're talking about like different acting techniques, whether it's like Meisner and the method and Stella Adler or whatever, all of those techniques are fine, but for film and television, we need to be able to personalize something in a way that that we can see on camera, right? And so if a lot of times students will say, well, I don't understand, I've never experienced that before. And and then it's like, well, what have you experienced? Right. And so I'm trying to think of a good example, but like, if there was a guy that I was doing this beautiful man, he looked like Jason Momoa on Game of Thrones. I mean, the guy told me he had gone to the gym every day for 7 years straight, including Christmas. Right. Like this guy had no body fat, gorgeous. Right. And he was doing this scene that was a breakup scene, or no, it was a relationship argument. And it was basically the guy drawing the line saying, you need to figure out what we're doing, because she had been guarded and withholding. And he played the scene like he was like it was a breakup scene. And like, he was like, I'm done with you. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing there? And he was like, well, she's not giving me what I want, so to heck with her. And I'm like, but the script is saying like, think about what you want from us. It's time you figure that out. Like, this is a scene where you guys are trying to, you care about her. And the guy straight up says to me, why? I mean, if she's not giving me what I want, I'll go get somebody else. And I just went, and then my head went, because you can. Right? Like, I realized like, this guy's like, if I want to get a date tonight, it's probably not a problem. He's very, attractive man.
He's operating from his own perspective and his own experience. Like, this is what's reality. Yeah.
Yes. And so I had to talk to him and be like, okay, well, do your parents give you everything you want? And he's like, not necessarily. Well, what do they think of this? Well, what if they didn't hear you? What if they weren't listening to you and you needed them to listen to you? What could you take away from them, or what could you threaten them with? And obviously a romantic relationship and your parent relationship is different, but I had to try and find a way for him to understand that, like, oh, I don't want to lose you, but I need you to be better. And he didn't seem to, I mean, he was probably 23, right? Like, and so it's that thing where it's like, you don't have that experience in a romantic set yet. And I'm sure he will one day. But how do we find it?
How do you find it? So that's a huge creative challenge for you then, in the moment of like not even knowing these people super well.
Yeah.
Like, what questions can you ask to get them to have some sort of aha or make a connection? And if that doesn't work, then like what other else? That's really interesting.
And I try to keep it as open and general as possible. And I often just say, I'm going to ask you some questions, but I don't want you to answer it. I just want you to nod if you have it, if you have an answer, right? So if I say, have you ever wanted something from your parents? I don't need them to tell me like, well, yeah, this one time. That's not important to me. That's not important to me. Okay, now you're thinking about something, right? And so it's the same thing if I said like, what do you want to have for dinner tonight? And I said pizza, and you went, oh my God, yes, right? Or if I said, I don't know, something, if I said broccoli and you went, blah, right? You had a visceral response to that. But if I said something that you had never eaten before, right? If I said some kind of Indian food dish that you had never heard of, you'd be like, well, I don't know, right? Yeah. And you don't have that experience, right? Spaghetti and meatballs. Yeah. Well, what's it like? What are you talking about?
Yes, you'd have to start to think about what's it like. Do you find that some students are more open to stretching their minds in that way than others? Is that just sort of, do you think that's personality, or is that experience, or is that, what do you think that is?
Yes, I will also say that it is, there's also privilege, expectation, and want involved. I will
say more about that.
Yes. So I will say that some people, I'm in Los Angeles. Some people come to Los Angeles because they want to be famous.
Okay, sure.
Some people go like, I want to be a movie star. Okay, great. What are you going to do to be a movie star? Well, I'm just going to be handsome or attractive. And, one time I gave I said, I want you guys to watch yourselves on tape and then give yourself notes. And people were like, oh, I didn't believe myself there. I didn't believe. And this other guy goes, I need to like work out more to get my jaw a little bit more defined. And I'm like, that's what you're taking away from this?
Interesting. Yeah. How revealing is that, though? That's like, right.
That was his, whether it's a narcissistic view or whatever it is, right? But his thing was, how do I look? Not that that can't be.
There is a demographic. Let's be honest. There 100%. Is a demographic of camera work that is about that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the first and foremost thing, right?
Yeah.
Or there's people that, again, right? Like I always make the joke, like, oh, we'll fix it in post, right? Like we'll edit it in, we'll edit that thing in. And I think there's some people that are just like, well, I just want to say the lines and have it be great. And it's kind of like, well, I just want to go to a bar and clap my hands and have somebody show up and be like, I'll date you. Or I want to wake up in the morning and have money in my bank account.
To be good. They're
correct.
Yeah. I wonder if that's the kind of people who maybe did theater before when they were younger, or acting classes, and it came to them easily. They didn't learn how to work yet.
Correct. When I say
experiences were well received and they didn't have to work that hard,
Yeah. And when I say privilege, it's often people that come from families that, if you've never had to work for something or struggle for something, and like, look, I wish I'd, like, more power to them. And there's also people who come from means or opportunity that work their butts off. And so it's not one thing or the other. And there's people who just are like, there's just people who don't get it also. It's a learned skill. I think, again, right? Just like in a weird way, like empathy is kind of a learned skill. Like there's a little bit of learning of like, how is what I'm doing affecting you? And for me, some of my favorite acting advice to give is like, not to think about how you're going to say the lines, think about why you're saying the lines. And when you're saying the lines, what are you trying to do either to or for the other person? And then when they're speaking, listen, and how are they affecting you? Because I could do the exact same scene with 5 different people, and it's 5 different scenes.
It should be different.
Right. Because, and for a lot of different reasons. Person's physically bigger than me, physically smaller than me. Our voice tones are different. I look more blue collar. They look, more white collar. They play it more sensitively. They play it more rebellious, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know why this popped in my head, but I was doing a scene one time, and I remember like I was doing a scene with this woman, and she said something. She said a line to me in a really specific way, and for some reason in my head, my brain just went, "My mom was right about you." Right? Like the way she said the line to me was like, "My mom was right about you. You're selfish." Right? And it was like, I don't know where it came from but she said something and looked at me in a way that grabbed something from a part of my life or a moment or a thought, right? And like, and it's like, be open and available to the possibility of what's happening in front of you.
That's hard as well. Like you're preparing, you're learning your part, if you will, and then you go and be also out of your life and be a real person.
I like
be responsive to this.
I like to joke that like acting and martial arts can both be done really well and really bad in the same way. Like that person that's taken some martial arts class and they're like, I know karate, attack me. And then you do the thing and they're like, no, not like that, like this. And I'm like, no, that's not the point of like knowing martial arts. It's that if a person comes at you, you can deal and respond to it, right? No, you have to attack me overhead. Right? So I can show you
choreography.
Otherwise it's choreography.
Right. Are you it's pantomime.
And if you learn a line and in your brain you go, I'm going to say it like this because it's cool, or I'm going to say it like this because it's tough. Well, if the person in front of you is crying, do you need to be tough?
So Where do you see yourself going now? I mean, I know you're just starting your own
Mm-hmm.
company, so that's going to take a
Yeah.
big deal of your focus. I mean, do you envision staying the course, staying in LA, continuing to have that be your home base, and kind of you've got a new agent and a new business, so
Mm-hmm. Everything is fluid.
starting afresh here in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm. I'm in kind of a full life reset, and and that's going to happen. What is it? People say like, oh, your career changes 3 times. You do like 3 or 4 major career changes in your life, and even though I'm still pursuing art and acting, and teaching, it's still shifting and changing. Also, the industry is shifting and changing. We came out of the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, and then we had a writer strike and an actor strike, and now AI's taking all our jobs or whatever it's going to do
Yeah.
in the next 5 years. Trying to be aware of how the industry changes, how it shifts. There's something called the big hot thing in LA right now is vertical dramas, which is using your phones.
Okay.
Is so like there's people that are producing basically soap operas for cell phone viewing. And it's really big in Asia, and it's become a little bit bigger here, but it's like 2-minute episodes. And then and so like, what is it and how do I work and what do I create? And do I see myself staying in LA? Potentially, but I've like I said, I've gone to India and taught, and it's a whole, I mean, it's Bollywood. It is as big of an industry,
If not bigger. Yeah.
if not
Yeah.
bigger, and different and interesting. And
Yeah.
one thing I'll say is like, I've gone out there and they're like, we want to learn how to be more grounded. And I'm like, great. Because if you watch a Bollywood movie, it's dance, it is very big,
It's
but
heightened. Yeah.
it's heightened.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah. Theatrical. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, a lot of Indian actors that I worked with out there, they have a presence and a physical understanding of themselves that surpasses a lot of what that's like kind of what was going on here in the 50s and 60s,
Well,
where like, that sort of physical presence was there.
it seems to me, as an outsider, as a layperson,
Mhm.
it's very much Bollywood seems to me like it's theater meets film
Yes,
in a
yes,
way.
a
Like
hundred
it's
percent.
somewhere in between. Yeah.
And I've having been there 2 times to teach, and hopefully going again later this year, there's fascinating stuff about it. And then they do their more grounded dramas, and like,
Mhm.
but it is that interesting thing of like just the physical awareness that a lot of the actors there have, because so much of it is dance training, is really interesting, because I think there's a lot of fun stuff that gets done with it. And then there's times where I'm like, yeah, I don't believe you at all right now. Let's figure out how to make that grounded.
Do you see yourself moving there or doing like some like a real consistent back and forth where you're going?
I would love that. Yeah, I actually like. I think like the culture and everything is really interesting. The people that I've worked with out there are incredibly lovely. The downside is that the weather is brutal. It is humid and hot, and like it is New York times 2 in that humidity sort of range, with like monsoon rains that like all of a sudden it'll rain like 6 inches and there's puddles everywhere. Um, but I do enjoy it. I even jokingly was like, oh, I want to be like the American bad guy, in like a Bollywood movie. I want to be like,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So like acting opportunities out there, I think that like, again, in this, like, the world is, we're closer in a lot of ways than ever before. And so I think there's interesting markets out there. I have former students that are really successful in India, and I even have former students that aren't Indian that have moved there. I have this wonderful actress who is out there now. She's from Germany, and she was a student of mine for about a year and a half. She went back to Germany. She had dated an Indian guy when she was in LA, and kind of like got into Bollywood and the culture, and decided, I'm going to go to India for a month and see what it's like. She got an agent. She booked a commercial, and now she's on like a TV show. Yeah. And like, she's like, it's really interesting. It's really fun. And she's like, I'm a minority, and that's weird because I've never experienced that before. But, it's just interesting. So yeah, love LA though. I do love LA. I love working here, and those opportunities, but also like, I think with the strikes, the pandemic, and now the fires, like how much the industry is going to shift. Atlanta and other parts of the country that have things going on. I just auditioned for something last week that shoots in Texas, Utah, like none of it was to be in LA. So it's either Texas, Utah, or in Europe. And I'm like, come on, Europe.
That'd be great.
That'd be fun.
Am I correct that the business aspects still mostly take place in LA, even if the work is not taking? Is that still the truth?
I think so.
Yeah.
But also the pandemic shifted it, where I have gone into audition in a room 2 times since I've been in LA. I mean, since the pandemic. Excuse me.
My theater friends have said the same in New York. Everybody's self-taping now,
so it almost doesn't
matter where you are.
Even theater is self-taping, right? And
it's pretty much,
And that to me is crazy, but so you're taping people, and so people will say, well, do I need to be in LA? I'm like, you need to be able to get to LA, right? Like in my opinion, right? My agent and my manager, I've never met in person.
Wow.
Right? It's like Zoom and email and, hey, how's it going? I saw your tapes. I saw your reels. Love your work. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, that feels just very different.
And so, I mean, when you and I were living in New York together, it was hard copy headshots and get on the train and knocking on doors.
Making hands.
I had this dream. I had this like idealized version that I was going to show up at NBC Universal at Rockefeller every day and be like, hi, I'm David Salsa and I'm an actor. I want to be on something. And they'd be like, and they'd be like, no. And then tomorrow I'd come back and be like, hi, I'm David Salsa and I want to be an actor on something.
I just kept on thinking I was going to get discovered at the Duane Reade drugstore.
Oh, so many people
have a headshot in your backpack just in case you stopped at the drugstore.
and now it's like you better have your actor's access on your phone to be able to pull up your digital headshot, or your Instagram, and all of that stuff too. Is and that's another aspect of it that I again needing to constantly learn. Right.
I'd like to think though that at the end of the day, you still have to be good. Like maybe those things will be, they might get you in the door, but you still have to be good.
Agreed. Right. At the end of the day, I mean, the idealized version is like the cream's going to rise to the top. Talent's going to win.
So are you still having as much fun as you always were?
Yes and no. I'm having, I think like there is a real, I don't know, there's given less of an F, right? There's caring less, which is really great, right? Yeah. Again, when you're, the desperation shrinks a little bit. There's, I think it's a war of attrition at times, right? I'm not in my 20s anymore with 10,000 other 22-year-old, men trying to get a role. Sure. I'm now in my 40s with maybe 100 guys trying to get a role. And there's that. When I work, I have fun. When I audition, I try and have fun. When I teach, I try and have fun. So all of that can be really fun. Starting my own business is exciting, but also really scary. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do online classes, and then I'm trying to find space to do in-person classes. And then I have to make sure that there's people there to have those classes. Right. Sure. And so there's the aspect, but I also want it to be people that I want to work with and people that I think one of the issues, in the business of acting is sort of the disillusionment of, I used to work for a place that just was like, you want to be an actor? Great. Pay us a bunch of money and we'll teach you, but not really, and not really invest in you. And I like investing in people. And I think investment in, you get out what you put in with people. And so, I think the business itself is very much about finding people that you click with and then everybody rising together, right? You find people that you click with. I always joke that like everybody has like their acting spouse, right? The person who they play well with, in that sort of way. and finding that is good. So I still have fun. It's still a grind, you know, and there's, you know, I'm in a point of transition, so there's going to be some grinding right now, but it's also exciting. And I mean, heck, I think you could also just ask like that question about life. Is life as fun as it used to be? It's like, well, sometimes I wake up and my back hurts and I don't know why, so that's not fun, you know. You know, you just what can I think that a better way for me, a way to think about it is, what can I do to make it fun today? What can I do to be excited about it today? Because just like, you know, I don't like folding laundry, but it's got to get done.
Yeah. Well, it's a job. I mean, it's your passion and it's your love, but it is also a job. And that's.
Yeah. And so there's times you have to say, all right, it's grind it and work time, whether it's learning lines or whatever. And then there's times, you know, on set, it's like, okay, David, time to focus, time to not act like. Acting like a little kid is part of what helped me get to where I am, but I can't always act like a little kid. And so, I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah. I still have fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, while we've been sitting here, a friend, I got a text message that popped up on my laptop that was like, I got a commercial audition. Can you help me with it yet? You know, later? And I'm going to be like, yeah, sure. That'll be fun. I'll help her. No pressure on me. So yeah.
Yeah. Just doing the thing that you like. No pressure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you going to do any more theater ever?
Maybe. I don't feel an itch for it.
Oh, okay.
I feel less of an itch for that. I don't know. I think there is something for me about being able to put something together that I can then watch is exciting. And you know, I did theater for 5 years at what I would say was a pretty high level. And, you know, I did a performance of Romeo and Juliet 120 times, you know, and like, that was cool to do because on the 87th time, how do you do it? But I'm also like, it's more fun to be like, okay, what are we shooting today? And it's similar and different. So that to me is exciting. And I think because I just want to do more of it, right? Maybe look, if I, you know, knock on wood, I book a TV show tomorrow, I'm second guy on the right on the poster of a procedural with my hand on the gun, and that show goes for 10, 12 years. And then after that, I'm probably going to be like, you know, it'd be really fun to do right now as a play.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha.
And so it's, you know, I love pizza, but if I eat it every day, I'm going to want something else. So maybe, I need a little bit of that.
But you haven't had too much pizza yet.
Never. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Oh, good. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go, but thank you for talking with me, and it's great to see you.
So good to see you.
Thanks, David. Thank you for being on the podcast today. If you would like to know more about David or to check out what he's up to, you can find him on his website, which is davidsalsa.com, or you can find him and follow him on Instagram. It's Gift of You Acting Studio on Instagram. Or you can find information about David on our website, which is arts-collab.com/creativelifepod. Thanks for listening today, everybody. And until next time, keep making stuff. Bye.